Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 14, the extremely important topic of customer relationship management. The specific topics we're going to cover are how we learn about how customers evaluate our products or services. The buzzword that's used in marketing is CX, customer experience, because we don't want to just look at how the customer evaluates the specific product, but how they evaluate the entire process of dealing with us as a company. We want to look at how we measure quality and satisfaction. We want to look at loyalty and customer relationship management programs. The idea of recency, frequency, and monetary value to be able to isolate and enlarge the customers that are most valuable to us, and the idea of customer lifetime value, CLV. The idea that if we can successfully retain customers, they become more and more profitable to us over time. If customers are satisfied, that just means that we met their expectation for the product or service. Customers are not going to be delighted until we exceed their expectations. And if we fail to meet their expectations, they're going to be dissatisfied. So you can see that satisfaction, delight, and dissatisfaction are not objective measures out there in the world. They're actually relative to what our customers are expecting from us. This is why restaurants such as McDonald's can get very high satisfaction ratings because customers expect a very basic bundle of services from McDonald's. They have different expectations for a 4-star restaurant. So that 4-star restaurant has to meet a different standard than McDonald's because customers condition their expectations on the type of good or service that you're offering. The idea of expectations and satisfaction applies through all types of goods and services. So in the past, we've talked about level of involvement, low involvement purchases and high involvement purchases. When you go to Taco Bell, that's a kind of a low involvement purchase, and you're not necessarily going to spend a lot of time thinking about what your expectations are. But the minute you get that burrito that looks like the one on the right rather than the one on the left, your expectation is going to catapult from your subconscious into your conscious, and you're going to become dissatisfied. However, a high involvement purchase, such as buying a car or picking a spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, is going to be more deliberative. Well, at least we hope it's more deliberative. So you'll already have a set of conscious expectations about your requirements for that situation. And you're going to compare your experience to that more conscious set of expectations. Also, we can look at expectations and satisfaction across the type of goods. So are we talking about search goods, experience goods, or credence goods? Remember that search goods are goods like athletic shoes that you can pretty much observe a lot about before you purchase them. Whereas experience goods cannot be evaluated until post-purchase. So if we're talking about, for example, a cruise on a ship, it's hard to know in advance how much you're going to like that, but you can know after the fact how much you enjoyed it and whether you got stuck in a port and unallowed to disembark until disease had ravaged the ship. So you're going to evaluate experience goods post-purchase. And credence goods, remember, are goods where even after you've experienced the purchase, you can't necessarily evaluate it very well. This is typical among professional services. For example, if you go to a lawyer and because you want to sue your neighbor, you can't really tell, even at the end of that, whether the lawyer did the best possible job or not. So typically, what people do in that case is that they base their evaluations on things that they can observe. So if you think about medical care, for example, um, you don't necessarily know whether you got the most competent medical care or not. But what you tend to do is you tend to equate and correlate the quality of care with things that you can evaluate, like is the waiting room nice, or the staff friendly? Uh, are the magazines more recent than 3 years old? And how easy was this facility to deal with? So, how do we form our expectations in order to evaluate um, our purchases? For one thing, we compare against our own prior experiences. If we've had a visit to a medical clinic before in the past, we have an idea of what to expect there, and we will evaluate a new visit against our own prior past experiences. We might also evaluate against similar experiences. So, for example, if you've never been to an attorney before and you don't know what that experience is going to be like, you might equate it to visiting other professionals. So, you have an idea of what it's like to visit your banker. You have an idea of what it's like to visit your physician. So maybe visiting an attorney is going to be somewhat similar to that. You also form expectations from talking to your friends and family, as well as claims that the company itself makes. If the company is claiming, uh, we're fast, we're efficient, we're friendly, then you have an expectation that the company is going to fulfill those implicit promises. And thirdly, we can form expectations from third-party experts like reviewers, like Consumer Reports, and like Rotten Tomatoes if we're interested in movies and television shows. So here you can see Rotten Tomatoes rating of Tiger King. It gets an 86% Rotten Tomatoes, which is high. And then it gives you some reasons. If you click through, it will give you some reasons that it gave that rating. So here's something we know from research about expectations and experience. And if you've had any psychology, this will ring a bell with Hertzberg's two-factor theory, which is broken down into factors that can cause dissatisfaction but can't create satisfaction. And that's called a hygiene factor. And the other set of factors in the two-factor theory are called motivational factors. And they're the factors that can actually cause you to be delighted or cause you to be motivated and happy. And here's what we know about expectation and experience in marketing research. The core product itself is a hygiene factor. It can make you dissatisfied, but if the company just delivers the core product, no matter how well it delivers the core product, it's only going to get you up to neutral. So, for example, if you go to a hotel, the core product that you expect is that you're going to have a bed, that the room is going to be clean, and that the facility is going to be secure. Hotels that deliver those three things can get you from a dissatisfied state to a neutral state. But they can't deliver cleaner than clean. They can't deliver more secure than secure. So they can only get you up to a neutral state. To get you to a delighted state, that company has to provide supplemental services, which we also call, if you recall, augmented products. So we had the core product, we had the augmented product. So when that company delivers over and above the core product. For example, in a hotel, maybe they have a happy hour, maybe they have a really pleasant bistro, maybe their check-in process is very seamless, and the desk people are very helpful. In a restaurant, maybe you've got a great waiter, it's a really pretty location, it's visually pleasing, it's not too noisy and crowded. All of those things can take you from neutral to delight. We're interested in marketing in the entire, what we call CX, customer experience. So every interaction that the customer has with your company is part of the overall customer experience. It's not just limited to the actual sale of the product. So imagine a walk-in clinic. All of these touch points are part of the overall customer experience. Was the parking adequate? When you went to check in, did you have to wait in line? Were people attentive? Did you have to fill out 37 forms in duplicate that all ask for the same information? Was the wait time reasonable? Were you given an appointment time of 10 o'clock and you still weren't seen until 11 o'clock, for example? Personally, I only give physicians 15 minutes of leeway. If I can keep my appointment time, I expect them to keep theirs as well. So, what were your interactions with the staff and other people at the facility like? Were they pleasant? Were they efficient? Were they professional, or were they less than that? What was the ambiance in the waiting area and in the clinical facility itself like? Was it clean? Was it pleasing? Was the lighting good? Did they have something for you to do? For example, a good selection of magazines while you were waiting. When you saw the nurse and you saw the doctor, what was that like? Was the doctor caring and interested and spending enough time with you, or was the doctor very hurried, staring at the forms that the nurse had filled out, not making eye contact with you, being brusque and rude? Were you being checked on while you were waiting, especially once you're in the clinic? Was it comfortable for you? And comfortable both in a social sense and in a physical sense. Was checking out efficient? Did you get a bill that you didn't understand? All of these things add up to the whole customer experience, and they all add up to how you evaluate that provider. So how do we measure customer satisfaction? Very often we measure through surveys like the one on the right. So on the right, we see some information gathered about how did you initiate, this is for an IT satisfaction survey, how did you initiate the technical support? Did you phone them, email them? Did you click through on their web support page or some other way? And then it's asking about your satisfaction, not just with the overall interaction, but with different dimensions of the interaction. Did they understand your problem? Did they have product knowledge? Could they answer your questions? Did they seem to have a good level of experience? Did it take them a long time to answer the issue? Did it take them a long time to communicate back with you? So it's useful for marketers to be able to disaggregate the overall level of satisfaction into components, because if all you know is that they weren't satisfied, how do you know what to fix? So we want to disaggregate these things down for diagnosis and for fixing problems. We can also look at indirect measures of satisfaction, for example, product returns, complaints, lack of repeat business or diminishing repeat business. We can also simply observe the interactions. And this is one that I really like, because if you know what your business is supposed to be delivering and you can observe an interaction between the company and the customer, you're going to understand more than perhaps the customer, him or herself, does about whether the service that they got lived up to your organizational standards. And finally, we can scrape social media for word of mouth that may be going on completely outside of our own website and social media um, facilities. So we want to keep up with that as well. Irritated customers are the customers that you can learn from and improve. So a lot of marketers like to say that your dissatisfied customers are your best customers. They're the ones who care about the product or the service, and they're the ones who will articulate to you what's going wrong. So you want to pay attention to why. When you have a customer who's complaining to you or a customer who says that they're dissatisfied on a survey, you want to have a substantive enough interaction with that customer to deeply understand what went wrong. And then you want to be able to let that customer know that this is not your standard and that you're going to do something to not only remedy their dissatisfaction, but exceed their expectations. And finally, you want to reach out to the customers who haven't complained to you. So, for example, if you got a customer complaint that they ordered a product online and the product that they received was not properly packaged and arrived damaged, then how can you reach out to the ones who didn't complain to see how widespread this problem is? If you've got a social media community or you've got a customer mailing list, you can reach out to customers and survey them on whether this has occurred to them or not. So you can use complaints as a springboard to find out about how widespread a particular problem is, even though not everybody has complained about it under their own initiative. So why do we worry about dissatisfied customers? The graphic at the bottom of the page tells you one reason that we're really concerned about customers that are dissatisfied. Satisfied customers may tell a handful of people about how happy they are, but dissatisfied customers broadcast it to the whole darned world. So, so word of mouth is not symmetrical. Good word of mouth is small relative to bad word of mouth. We know some things from research about curing dissatisfaction, and the number one way to help overcome dissatisfaction is to have your frontline employees, the employees who are going to interact with that dissatisfied customer, empowered to redress the problem. They don't have to go to a supervisor. They don't have to send it up the line and have somebody else resolve it, that they're empowered to resolve it, that they're trained to be empathetic with the customer, and that they're trained also not only to fix the problem itself, but to offer something in reward to that customer for their trouble. That is the number one way to turn around a dissatisfied customer. However, from the company's point of view, you need to go further. You need to assess the underlying causes. Why did this problem occur in the first place, and how can we be fixing it systematically? So we can fix it through better procedures, we can fix it through better training, and we can fix it through systems that work the way that they're supposed to within the company. So you don't want to treat complaints and dissatisfied customers as one-off incidences. You want to treat them as the tip of an iceberg that needs more systematic correction throughout the company. So while you want to identify your dissatisfied customers, you also want to be able to identify your best customers. And one tool that we use to do that is called the RFM model, the Recency, Frequency, and Monetary Value model. And you can see that represented in this little cube down here on the bottom right. So recency means that they've engaged with your company in the recent past. They're not somebody who bought something 15 years ago. That they engage with your company frequently. So they're not a one-off customer. They're a loyal customer. They engage with you frequently and they spend money. They have more monetary value to you than other customers. So that subset of customers that are high in recency, high in frequency, and high in value, that is your ideal segment. So you want to be able to identify them and then you want to analyze them so that you can find more like them. There are a lot of what we call CRM, customer relationship management systems out in the world. Uh, they are very sophisticated. They not only track or keep a record of who a customer is and what their contact information is. That's kind of the most primitive form of customer relationship management. But they also interconnect databases of those people within their organizations. So if you're doing business to business marketing, for example, and you've got a contact in First National Bank of Pulaski, you want to be able to connect that person with other contacts that you have in the organization and see how they interrelate to each other. You want to have access to news about the organization. You want to have access to information about the organization's demographics. For instance, how big is it? How many employees does it have? How many assets does it have under management? Uh, and so forth. And you want to have access to your sales history with that organization. What are all the sales that we've made? What are all the proposals that we've made? What's our hit rate or our success rate? We want to have access to project and proposal tracking. We want to have, for each salesperson in your own organization, you want to have access to their sales pipeline tracking. In other words, how many opportunities or new leads do they have in their pipeline? How many calls have they made? How many proposals have they made? How many of those proposals are now into a negotiation phase, and how many closings do they do? So this allows you not only to compare across sales reps, for example, but also to forecast sales through objective data like the sales pipeline. So you can see that good CRM systems start at the individual salesperson or the individual customer level, and then they can aggregate up. They can aggregate up to customer organizations. They can aggregate up to departments. They can aggregate up to regions. They can aggregate to divisions for management assessment of how the organization is performing vis-a-vis its customers. So CRMs are extremely prevalent, as you might guess, in business to business marketing and sales. So here's another screen that's a more consumer-oriented CRM. A consumer-oriented CRM is going to carry information like, of course, contact information for the customer, but also the customer demographics, customer psychographics, quite possibly, uh, information about how they interact with social media, transaction data, historical transaction data that we've had, complaints that they filed, projects that we're engaged with them in, and a record of all of the communications that our organization has had with them. So not only the emails that we've had back and forth with them, but other kinds of communications that we've had back and forth with them. It may also connect to external data about that customer, for example, their LinkedIn profile. And this goes for both B2B and B2C systems, but also many of them connect with your phone system, for example, so that if that customer calls you, your phone system and your computer are interconnected so that when you pick up that phone to say hello, that customer's profile automatically flips up on your screen so that you know exactly who you're talking to, and you can look at, for example, their sales history, uh, their uh, their demographics, their location, their other interactions with the company. So that's pretty slick, and these systems seem to just get slicker and slicker and more comprehensive, more and more integrated with other aspects of the marketing process. There are a bunch of CRM systems out there. If you go, as many of you will, into sales for a B2B company, you're most likely going to see Salesforce, but these other systems are also in widespread use. There's one called HubSpot, which offers a free version. And I would encourage you to get that free version and to start loading all of your contacts into it. One thing that I discovered over uh, a career is that you never want to throw away your contacts. You never know when you're going to reach out to someone that you knew several years ago or you knew in a different context. And so you want to start building that database of contacts early in your career. So, as I say, HubSpot offers a free version. It's not terrible. Uh, there are add-ons that you can get that you have to pay for, but the basic CRM within HubSpot is free. And most of these others have 14-day free trials. However, once you get through your free trial, unless you're going to purchase them, you're going to lose the contact information that you so a final concept that we want to introduce in this chapter is the idea of customer lifetime value, CLV. There's an old saying in sales, the cheapest customer you'll ever get is the one you already have. And here's why that is. It's very, very expensive to acquire a new customer, because the cost of acquisition is not just the cost for that one customer. It's also, you also have to incorporate the cost for all the customers that you tried to get but failed. So if you go after, let's say you get a lead list of 100 customers and you bought that list for $100. Out of that 100 customers, let's say that you reach out and have contacts with as many of them as you can. That costs money. You get into a discussion or a negotiation or a proposal with half of them. That again costs more money. And at the end of the day, you get 5 customers out of the process. Well, the cost of those 5 customers is the total accumulated cost you've had since you purchased that original list. So that may be not just the original $100, but several thousand more dollars. So you almost always lose money. In fact, you do lose money when you're acquiring a new customer. If you only have one successful sale with that customer, you're never going to make your money back. So you have to retain that customer, and you have to understand how the value of that customer grows over time. So the components of customer lifetime value are the negative cost, or well, the cost uh, of obtaining the new customer. Then you experience some additional costs to retain customers that you have. You have to keep in touch with them. You have to keep bidding on projects with them, or reaching out to them. So there are costs to retaining the customer. But if you retain the customer over time, typically, not only do you make more sales to that customer, but typically those sales will grow larger and larger, either because you're getting a higher share of their wallet or because they're trusting you more and making bigger purchases with you. And so customer retention is an extremely important part of the overall profitability picture at the customer level. Your retention rate, of course, is going to decay over time. If you gain 100 new customers, your next cycle with them, you may only have retained 70%. And then the next cycle with them, you may only have retained 70% of that 70%, which is 49%. So it's really, really important to marketers to focus on building customer loyalty and retaining customers. That's what drives the bottom line from the customer level. Okay, so to summarize, understanding and fixing customer dissatisfaction is very important to preventing customer loss and to preventing negative word of mouth in the marketplace. Customer relationship management in an organized and systematic way is key to retention through communications, and customer retention is key to profitability. I want to just briefly revisit customer experience, CX, because we always want to keep in mind that that customer is evaluating you not just on the product, not just on the point of sale, but on every contact, every touch point that they have with your company. So consequently, it's important for every part of the company, including the customer service people and the billing people and everybody else who has an impact on how that customer perceives the company. Is really important for them to have an acute sense of how important their role is in creating customer satisfaction and retaining customers. Well, that's about it for customer relationships and customer relationship management. Talk to you later.